expects. It failed to meet the expectations of the people of this country. There's been criticism of the way the Electoral Commission, INEC, failed to deal with charges of electoral fraud, even after credible allegations were made about so many irregularities. Many international observers, including most recently the US ambassador to Nigeria, Mary Leonard, as well as the main opposition parties, have said that the ballot did not live up to the aspirations of Nigerians for democracy. The PDP and the Labour Party have both refused to accept the official results and are mounting legal challenges. Today, the runner-up in the election, Atiku Abubakar, led a march to INEC headquarters in Abuja to drive home his point. And the US ambassador to Nigeria, Mary Leonard, has added her voice to the chorus of the critics. And so has the Archbishop Emeritus of the Catholic Diocese of Abuja, John Cardinal Onaiyekan, who's described the outcome of the poll as tragically questionable. And John Cardinal Onaiyekan joins me now in the studio. Thank you very much indeed, Cardinal, for joining us. Very honored to have you here.
I'm greatly honored to be at your prime time.
Well, you are prime time, so it's lovely to have you here. And you were quoted, as I just mentioned, as describing the results as tragically questionable. Tell us more about what went wrong in your assessment.
Before we go to what went wrong, I still want to go back to what the U.S. ambassador said.
Mary Leonard,
that the election fell far short of the expectation of Nigerians, not only of the youth of Nigerians. Expectations. You see, why this election is particularly important for all of us is that it's perhaps the first election in which Nigerians had high expectation. You shouldn't forget that until now, Nigerians didn't have much trust in the electoral process. And they believe that, well, those who can go and line up. The result will not matter. And even if it mattered, it will not change anything in their lives. We have all been here in these past months when we begin to see people really believe that this time around, the election will be an opportunity for Nigerians to really have a real change. Let's use the words, yes, change. And to add to this expectation, the umpires of the election, INEC, starting from the chairman and the spokesperson, the lawyers, kept keeping up this expectation, telling us everything will be fine. Even when we raised fears, anxieties about certain challenges that we foresaw, the Bishops' Conference of Nigeria raised not doubts, but caution about the use of technology. We said it very clearly in one of our communique that we should not rely totally on technology because technology on its own cannot guarantee a free and fair election. That the only thing that will guarantee a free and fair election is an honest management of the technology. So with all that as hopes and aspiration, the result that we got really, well, I will not say dashed our hopes and aspirations, because if you say so, it means that those hopes and aspirations are gone forever. I like to believe, and I keep encouraging the young people I meet, wait a minute, it's not the end of the day. Please keep your aspirations high. Continue to believe that Nigeria can make it. That is what is most important. And no matter how the court cases go, it is important that we at least admit that something has gone wrong. And
INEC has, to some extent, admitted that something did go wrong.
Thank God that Professor Mahmoud did agree that there were issues, which, of course, the winners perhaps don't have to agree that there were issues about the election that brought them victory. But I think it would have been better not to keep saying that this was the best elections we ever had in Nigeria. It flies in the face of the realities around us. If we are able to agree, all of us, both the winners and the losers, that there's something that went wrong at that election. Then we can begin to look at the issues that, Charles, you raised at the very beginning, which also both national and international observers have raised. We need to handle it, tackle it, so that the whole hours that people spent on the line will not be really in vain.
Nevertheless, the case, I mean, I think you make very good points there. The case is expected to go to court. A lot of optimism and expectation of a new dawn, as you mentioned, might have washed away, but it needs to have its day in court before you can then say conclusively that that is the end of it, and the person who won by official sort of numbers gets in there. Do you believe that INEC broke the law? Because there is a difference between doing something wrong and inefficiently and actually breaking the law, and that needs to be proved in courts, doesn't it?
I'm not even sure the court will prove that for us. I'm a religious person, and I believe in the voice of conscience. At the end of the day, the issue is much of the challenges we had, were they as a result of force majeure, or were they deliberate? Even some people have suggested that they were not only deliberate on the 25th of February, that it had been planned, prearranged all along to achieve a certain objective.
But the key challenge is to prove it in court.
Now, like I'm saying, you may not be able to prove it in the church.
Right.
Whether you prove it in the church or not, those who
not
have...
in church, in court.
In court, sorry. Yes, those who... And those Nigerians who did anything to dash the expectation of our people, they have a case with God.
But why do you think it might be difficult to prove it in court as this goes into litigation? Do you not trust the judicial system to be independent?
As you can see, I didn't say it is because it cannot be proved in the court. I say whether it is proved in the court or not. Whether the court can prove it is a legal matter. You are bringing in a lawyer after me, isn't it?
Yes.
You can please put that question. Put that question.
I like that. But then you're someone who's followed Nigerian politics quite a lot.
Yes.
Do you think that the judiciary can potentially be compromised?
Well, of course, the judiciary can be compromised because the judiciary has itself given us cases where some of their people have been compromised and they have punished them. This has happened. Even a whole Chief Justice of the Federation was sacked for doing wrong things. So they are not angels.
Ostensibly doing wrong things.
Well, anyway, me who I'm just looking, I'm not the one who sacked him. The government sacked him, and he didn't say that he has been maligned. Anyway, I'm just saying.
Well, he did actually, right? But that's fine. Go on.
The way things are, we still have to put our trust in the Supreme Court.
Yes, I agree with you.
And here I quite agree with Peter Obi, who said that very clearly, that he had confidence in the courts. And he based it on his own personal experience, that he's had cases that went to court, and eventually, because he believed he was right, that the court actually gave him his rights. So he is full of confidence that the court will also justly look at his grievances and give him his right. I think it was a good message for Nigeria, especially for many who had who had no interest, who didn't believe in the court.
They had lost faith, basically.
You know this cynical proverb that a thief steals from you and tell you, meet me in the court. It knows because his brother is the judge. Now, with this cynical proverb has been going on, and I believe we should not allow it to actually become more than just a flippant proverb. A nation cannot lose confidence in its judiciary. We cannot.
Yeah, let's
the time when we reach there, it means there's no more country. We like to believe too that there are enough honorable gentlemen and ladies in that hallowed court that will look at things. And they will look at it and deliver their judgment in clear legal terms that anybody who wants to listen to what you might say, concrete facts and figures will be able to see, okay, this is what we are looking for. We want a closure on this matter. And I'm sure after the Supreme Court has finished its judgment, that will be the end of the electoral process. So even people who are angry now, it is part of the electoral process. The election of 25th of February was just the high point, but we know the election is not over until it is over.
But of course, as far as you're concerned, even if that electoral process is exhausted through the judiciary,
yes,
there are moral consequences for this.
Oh yes. The first moral consequence, of course, is what I have said. Those who have betrayed their own conscience in this process, thereby turning the nation into chaos. They have, first of all, consequences on their own conscience. But more seriously, and this is not something I'm an expert at, but I do believe that a nation that decides to hobble along on elections that are not properly done cannot expect to move well. There will be prices to pay. And unfortunately, those who will pay the prices are the people of Nigeria, starting with the poorest people, not with people like me. I would generally, no matter how they badly rule Nigeria, at the state I will eat every day. But there are people for whom it's a matter of life and death. And we will keep track of how things are going. Talking of courts, I hope that among other things which we should review about our electoral process, this court, I do know that there are countries not too far from us where they have a specific court for these electoral cases. And that court adjudicates over electoral grievances and concludes everything before anybody is sworn in. In our own situation, Obi and Atiku can be in court for the next 3 years.
Absolutely. It could go well past the...
I thought they used to say, when your lawyer comes, please ask him what it means. They used to say that justice delayed
is justice denied. Yeah. I'm getting worried about your chain rubbing on your microphone.
I'm trying to keep it in check. Yeah. So I'm thinking that this gives us an opportunity to look again at that whole arrangement whereby you have a serious complaint about the election. The court takes its time and they must take their time to judge it. And meanwhile, the person declared a winner continues as a ruler, until maybe after a year or two. We have seen it done with regard to governors, which are more or less in this regard.
Well, it took Obi 3 years to
but before then, somebody else was ruling.
Yeah.
Somebody else was ruling. Those 3 years, were they legal years, legitimate years, morally? These are issues that we must raise. But I do believe that Nigeria, as a giant of Africa, you can still borrow a little from the smaller countries, and we can rearrange our situation such that electoral grievances should be settled and done within a time that it will be gone, finished and done by the time you are swearing in somebody. You swear in someone who is now President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Commander-in-Chief, and he should be appearing in court over a allegation. It's not, to say the least, it is not neat.
That's a good point. And do you mind if I ask who you voted for and why you chose that candidate? Because it doesn't sound like you voted for Bola Tinubu then.
I don't want to repeat what I presume the mistake of my president, who voted and say, look at whom I voted for.
Well, it's after the fact now. So.
I will, your viewers and so on, probably from the way we are our conversation is going, they probably arrive at the conclusion you have arrived, that I didn't vote for the declared winner. But let's just leave it at that.
Right, okay, well, that's understandable. Nigeria, of course, as you said, often seen as a country with enormous potential, but which spectacularly fails to live up to that potential. So given all the disillusionment that clearly exists, some of which you mentioned, particularly amongst young people, what do you expect to happen in that regard under the new president, Bola Tinubu, assuming he does get sworn in as president?
Assuming he does become my president, let me say this. I have not arrived at that conclusion yet, for the simple reason that the process of the election is still going.
Yeah, but you sometimes have to think ahead and say, given that the history of this country, there's never been a presidential election overturned.
That doesn't mean it will never happen.
Yeah, I know, but
otherwise there will be no provision in law for the election to be challenged in court.
Yes, that's a good point.
So my mind is still ready, open, to have any of the three as my president come May 29th.
But assuming it becomes Bola Tinubu.
Assuming, okay, which is a difficult task to assume, but I can't.
it's a concept that you can't quite get your head around.
Not at this point. Not at this point. I am not prepared to start speculating how the nation would be.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be speculating off-piste because he is the president-elect. Yeah, so you would not be speculating about something.
President
I mean, the trajectory at the moment seems to indicate that he is going to be sworn in at the end of May.
I do not understand this trajectory, and definitely I'm sure Peter Obi and Alhaji Atiku Abubakar does not agree with this.
Yeah, but you may not accept it, but it becomes an ineluctable fact.
Let me put it this way.
Yeah.
Whoever is president of Nigeria and becomes legally so declared, becomes my president, I give him the respect of a president, and I will still continue to in my utterances, in my actions as a fairly mature Nigerian citizen, to give good advice to him. And I would expect him that now that he's president of Nigeria, he should act as the president of Nigeria, not as a contestant in an election. Because by that time, the campaigns are over.
Right.
And in particular, there is a bad habit that has become ingrained in Nigeria, that people who win elections feel that they are only they are there to look after and take care of those who voted for them. We hear in my small Kogi state, we once had a governor who had a map of the state, and he painted the state depending on the amount of votes he got from different parts of the state.
So red means I won't go anywhere near you lot.
My place in Kaba, we didn't vote for him, we're all red. Which means forget it, for as long as there, you won't get anything. But that is unjust.
Yeah, it certainly
is. It is unjust.
Yeah, and it's
morally
as well.
unjust. Yeah. Because once you are declared a president, you are the president of the whole country.
Absolutely.
Both of those who voted for you and those who didn't vote for you. Which we should even carry the matter further. All this time, we've only had a situation where a political party wins election and thinks that the whole burden of governance falls on them. Everybody else must sit back and watch them, which is not right. After winning election, the country has to move on. Everybody must be brought on board. I'm not saying that you should make the leader of the opposition your minister of foreign affairs. No, but at least there must be leeway to run the country in such a way that all forces are brought on board. And that means that we do not discriminate against people who didn't vote for you. We do not reject good ideas because of where they are coming from. I don't know whether Bola Ahmed Tinubu will agree with me on these suggestions that I'm giving free of charge. But if that happens, I think it will make a lot of difference. One of the reasons why the election is the struggle for the election is almost like a war is precisely because of this almost syndrome of winner take all, winner take all means the loser gets nothing. It shouldn't be. That cannot bring a country. You can't have a united country that can work hard to build a nation that the whole world can be proud of.
And do you believe that after all this, if, for example, Bola Tinubu becomes, as is expected, the president of Nigeria, that young people are likely to still be engaged in politics? You talked about this groundswell that emerged of people getting into politics because they were confident in the system. Or do you think the questions around this election might discourage more young people from getting involved?
We shall see. And I think the facts will bring out what will happen. A lot will depend on what happens in the first few months. People will know where we are going, and what direction we are going.
And there are, of course, as we mentioned, legal challenges being prepared on the election results. If those challenges go forward, as we expect them to, are you concerned about the impact they may have on society? Or are you hopeful that it might change the result at least?
The only change in the result that anybody is looking forward to now is a cancellation of the announcement made by Mahmoud. If the change in result simply means fiddling with figures, but the final outcome stays the same, then there is still no change. So and since that is still a possibility that is before us, I'm one of those who do not want to perish that possibility until it has been excluded. Yeah, this probably is a time for me to also make an important point that has been in my mind all along. Maybe speaking from point of view of somebody whose main area is religion. I always keep saying, God alone is the owner of power. However, Almighty God doesn't come down to rule human beings. So human beings have a share in the power to rule human beings. If we agree basically that all power belongs to God, then whoever holds power in this world knows that he is holding it more or less. He must use power which belongs to God the way God wants, namely use it well. How do human beings determine who rules them? We must not forget that there are many ways, many arrangements that humanity has devised over the centuries. People may not realize that. I mean, historically, the most common arrangement for rulership has always been monarchy, which is ruling by the accident of birth, hereditary, and it has worked for so long. But it worked for so long because the people accepted it. So there's a kind of inbuilt ethos of democracy in it. People accept that whomever is the son of the king will be the king. Normally, along with that is inbuilt some kind of religious idea that it's God that has put him there. That is one way. But we also know that there have been people have ruled others by force. We call them the dictators. You rule because you are powerful. And the most powerful person decides to be, I'm your ruler. If you don't want it, it's too bad. And we went through it in Nigeria for more than 30 years. Even though we may not want to admit it, many people wouldn't want me to talk that way.
Right.
The whole period of the military rule is that somebody happens to be in the right place with the right gun at the right time, and he shoots his way through, and he becomes president. And if he fails, he will be lined up and gunned down. But if he's lucky and he succeeds, he becomes president. And we all accept him. We have always accepted them. So much so that at the end, they even have the title of Grand Commander of the Federal Republic. So that's another way. We also have ruler by a group of elite. We normally
briefly, because we're almost out of time.
Oligocracy. Before we come talking about democracy. Of course, nowadays, in the world of today, democracy has become the most preferred way of rulership. It is the best way, we are told, even though it's not a perfect way.
Right.
And there's no perfect democracy anywhere. And it's particularly difficult. But the whole idea, it is that the people choose who will rule them. That means anybody can emerge as ruler. The son of nobody can become the king of everybody. That is the whole beauty of
right. Okay.
But when that being the case, it means me as a religious leader, I can accept any ruler provided he respects God and behaves well to the people.
And is chosen by the people.
If it's democracy, he must be chosen by the people. Well, it is
democracy in Nigeria.
But if we claim to be doing democracy, he should be chosen by the people.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And once he is chosen by the people, he is our ruler.
Right.
And we are obliged to allow him to rule. That doesn't mean we have lost all our rights. So
sure. No, I understand that.
He is still obliged to follow a minimum of good behavior and good.
On that note, I want to thank you very much indeed, John Cardinal Onaiyekan, Archbishop Emeritus of the Catholic Diocese of Abuja. It's always brilliant talking with you. Thank you.
I just want to tell our viewers it is important, capitally important, that we have a beautiful nation, and everybody must join hands to make sure that we keep it peaceful.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Otherwise,